You'd probably shoot your brains out though.
Yes. What is up?
After.
Ladies and gentlemen, do not adjust anything. It has been a while, but the CrushCast is back, baby. You know it. I, of course, am Aphrodite's Crush here. And starting off here with the new era. The new era has begun. The co-host is...
I'm Ian.
Welcome aboard for the official, unofficial pseudo relaunch that probably should never happen in the first place.
Oh, come on, man. Everybody does a comeback.
Huh?
Everybody does a comeback.
And now I am one of those people. But I'm currently putting out the links because, yes, we are live. If you want to take a look, I have the link posted up on Twitter at Aphrodite's Crush and also on Facebook at Aphrodite's Crush Entertainment. So if you're interested to come on through, dig in the chat. Got any questions, pop it in the chat. That's what we are here for, baby.
Actually, I have a question. Are we trying to keep this family friendly, by the way?
You know, in the original version, we kind of let it ride. However, since it's going to be on the main channel of my YouTube, we're going to, at least for this week, keep it family friendly. Because in the old days, it was very much the Wild Wild West. So,
yeah. Oh, that's cool, man. It's going to be interesting trying to keep it family friendly with the subject that we're going to be talking about, though.
Hey, just because you can't get R, you can certainly get PG-13.
That's true. Or you could do what's the NC-17? Isn't that like between an R and whatever?
No, NC-17 is worse than R. Come on, man.
I thought R was like you had to be 18 or whatever.
Well, the way that the ratings work, PG-13 is parental guidance suggested. Nobody admitted under the age of 13 without parent or guardian. R is you have to be either 17 or accompanied by a parent or guardian. And C-17 is nobody under the age of 18 admitted, period.
Okay, I see.
So that's so what's going on there? Let's see. If for some reason Facebook doesn't like me.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Well, apparently a bunch of sites are being a pain in the butt tonight.
Yeah, I went through some was it 504 errors on YouTube trying to get this set up and ready to go. So
yeah, you tried Twitch also, and that wasn't having any of that.
Yeah, Twitch was not having it. So
Twitch was being the same name but with a B.
Yeah. A bewitch? Bewitch?
No, you take the T and the W out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
alrighty, so
did you want to go over what the topic's going to be?
Yeah.
Dive right into it.
Get started. It's going to be a nice, fun show today, but unfortunately, we got some news of two famous film. One is a director, a writer. One, of course, being an actor that passed away today. So before we get started, we had to say R.I.P. to George Romero, which, of course, is the brains behind anything of the Living Dead, essentially. The reason why the zombie genre is so popular today is mainly because of him. So that would be one person. The other person was Martin Landau. I think Martin Landau was 89 years old. I think George Romero might have been 77. Don't quote me on that. But Martin Landau, of course, one of the most famous actors, and lived to the golden age and and everything. And unfortunately, he passed away today as well. So
that sucks. How old was he?
I think he was like 91, 92.
Oh wow.
And so,
well, he lived a full life then, at least, you know.
Oh yeah. So of course, getting past that, and RIP to both those guys.
Yes.
Now, for me, I didn't see a lot of Martin Landau's work, unfortunately, but George Romero, on the other hand, inspired me to write and like come up with better stories, and directly influenced what ended up being my first short story, because I liked the Night of the Living Dead style, and I liked that kind of simplistic view of it. So if you don't know which story I'm talking about, I have it on my DeviantArt account up there for everyone to see. Oh man, it's been so long since I've actually updated that. I got to update that. But
yeah, I remember you showed me your DeviantArt. I think you had like a bunch of photography on there.
I do a lot of photography. I'm getting ready to do another photography project too. I'm just
I'm trying to save up for a new camera, maybe over Christmas or something. I'd like to get that 80D from Canon.
And those DSLRs are a prime choice, man. But
well, if you get them like used or refurbished, you could get them like a lot cheaper.
Oh yeah. But my camera only ran me about like $200, and I got it on clear. I've got a Fujifilm RS, I think it's called. It's been a while since I cracked it. Actually, no, I got the box right behind me on the shelf.
Oh, okay.
Up there. But yeah, it's more of a shame because I mean George Romero like directly influenced a lot of the writing style that I have, as far as the way he viewed particular scenes and like how he wrote a lot of just situational dialogue that directly affects the movies that he was directing too. I think he actually encapsulated what The Walking Dead tries to emulate. You know, and when you're watching a Romero movie, for instance, you didn't feel like you were watching a drama that just happened to involve zombies. It's one thing I thought was really lost on the Dawn of the Dead remake. Even though it was okay, it was okay, it was all right. But for me, it lost a lot of that kind of charm and attitude that the original Dawn of the Dead had. But that's definitely something that's going to be sorely missed.
What do you think went wrong with like those Resident Evil movies? Because I think the first one was pretty popular, and then it kind of died off after that.
I think that starting with the second one, they went more towards of an action ideal with the movies. That's one thing that even up to the last one, which I like the last one. The only one I really didn't like was Afterlife, and that's because it threw in the 3D too much, and it was just annoying. But they went more towards an action bent with Resident Evil, and didn't focus more on the like interpersonal relationships. You know, you had to have interpersonal relationships with Resident Evil specifically because most of the time you were in close quarters. You know, you didn't get split up, all this other crap didn't happen, and plot didn't go this way all the time.
Right. Well,
I think
from what I could tell, I think the movies fell apart too because they involved all these like giant creatures and different variations of monsters. You know, it wasn't just good old fashioned zombies, and they focused on this evil corporation and stuff. I think those were all too many distractions. You know.
Well, the thing is that the games had that too. It's just they wove the story a lot better in the games than they did in the movies. And that's partially what they're probably going to end up doing when they go back and remake the Resident Evil franchise again. And you had things like Nemesis and Lickers and other styles of monsters in the games. It's just they were introduced much better. They were used much better. They weren't just throwaway enemies. Now, yeah, Wesker was one of the be all end all bad guys, but there was so much more to the games that people miss and wanted out of the movies that they never got. And I think if they kind of go back to what inspired the original movie, instead of trying to make an action movie that happens to have the name Resident Evil on it, they'll be better off. They really, really will be better off. So,
Yeah. Well, what was the one where the girl had like superpowers and stuff or something? Was that the
that's like
second
half the
one?
movies. That's like from
Yeah.
the second one to the fourth one or something. But but I ended up rebuying all the movies, and we have a couple of them here, and I ended up rebuying them specifically because I wanted to get the last one and kind of have the entire set together. So I like having the entire set together. But
Right. I was a fan of the Dead Rising games. You know, where you could like piece together like weapons and stuff.
there were rumors of a movie that wasn't the CGI film, but I
Yeah.
haven't heard much about that recently.
Actually,
But
I saw
I
that
think
movie.
that's
I saw the movie. They made a live action of it. I think it was like it was like a sci-fi series type of movie.
I must have missed that. But speaking of sci-fi, bridging the gap from zombies and guys we're really going to miss and fantastic
Yeah.
actors we're going to miss into something new school. Uh, one of the topics I've been wanting to talk about for a while is this new series on sci-fi called Blood Drive. Now, for everybody out there who doesn't know what Blood Drive is, it's a weekly serial that they produce for the Sci-Fi Channel. It's TVMA, so your kids shouldn't be watching this at all. But
Right.
it's essentially about a car race where the cars run on human blood in a futuristic world of 1999, where oil is $2,000 a gallon, and basically everyone's just struggling to survive. But the winner of the blood drive race gets $10 million. So,
Yeah.
I am a huge purveyor of the grindhouse style. Pretty much any grindhouse style. Uh, I like B movies to such an extent where like almost half of my movie collection is B movies or grindhouse style specifically.
Yeah. Well,
And
maybe you should probably first describe like what the definition of grindhouse is in general.
well, grindhouse in and of itself, and this is something I was going to get into too, is what's the best way to explain it? Is any movie that you have out that has a more kind of extreme bent to it. You don't worry too much about the acting in most cases. Even if they're trying really hard to be good actors, a lot of times you don't really catch a gem of an actor in grindhouse style. There are very varied amounts of subgenres in the grindhouse style. Things like sexploitation, blaxploitation, and getting really specific to like women in prison movies. But it's basically this entire genre of B movies that came out anytime between like the late 50s up to now. And it's basically directors and actors going for it for like every scene because a lot of times you only get one take no matter what you're doing. So you got to pump it out. You got to go for it. Some of the old school American International pictures were grindhouse style because, like for American International, for instance, they would come up with a poster and they sell a funder on the poster. So I say they came up with Beach Blanket Babes Go Bingo, have some dude draw up a poster for it, and Jim Bob from Huntington Beach, California would say, "I'll fund that. I'll give you $25,000." They would then shoot the movie based on the poster in like 2 weeks, cut it really crudely, and then it would go traveling around the United States for a month and a half, make its money, and then they do the process entirely over again. It's just like Shotgun Wedding meets filmmaking in like the most extreme sense. And
Right.
That's like kind of the grindhouse culture. So that's what
Yeah.
Blood Drive kind of brings it from, is just going for it every single take, every single genre you can think of. They are going for, at least in this first season. We're only about 5 episodes in. I've seen about 3, but it's just a fantastic idea that is just taken to the 10th level by a very brave, mind you, a very brave sci-fi channel who picked up the series.
Yeah.
I wasn't too sure about them going in the more general direction of programming they have. You know, things like they have this other TV show called Winona Earp, and it's basically Winona Earp killing monsters. But if they can come out with, you know, a lot more varied programming like they're doing now, besides funding 45 Sharknado movies, I'll be a happy guy.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'd like to say in general too is the acting should always usually take a backseat to the storyline itself. The storyline always should be more important than the acting. I mean, the acting is really important, but the story is probably the most important. It's kind of like with video games, where the actual playability of the video game should be the most important part.
And that's something that not a lot of people kind of get. It's like, well, this is a horrible movie. It's like, okay, are you watching it for what it really is worth? You know,
Right.
and that's partially why people don't get a lot of the movies that reach cult status, is because they don't kind of get how I mean, people are fed, like, you know, these new movies that have been given 25, 45, 150, $200 million budgets, and then they can afford Tom Cruise, you know,
Yeah.
and they wonder why sometimes movies like The Mummy, which we'll talk about another time, but
That deserves its own discussion, huh?
yeah, how the movies like The Mummy get produced and are terrible, and how a movie like, per se, I was kind of looking at my shelf over here, how a movie like I could go down the line, really, how a movie like Sin City had half the budget and was twice the movie that The Mummy was. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, I consider Sin City more of a grindhouse style flick, almost like a crime noir. Even though it had a pretty hefty budget behind it, it really had that style that a lot of people look for. Um, and that's something that it's nice to see, that the grindhouse as an ideal, as a filmmaker, isn't lost, and it's not bastardized. You know, there's a lot of people who after the grindhouse double feature came out, and if you haven't seen the movie Grindhouse, you should see the movie Grindhouse. But people who watch that and just like, oh well, I need to make movies like this to make money now. You know? Like after Pulp Fiction, there were 1,000 Pulp Fiction imitators.
Yeah.
If you don't get why it was successful and how it was good in the first place, you can't remake it. And it's just nice to see that the makers of Blood Drive get it, and are doing something that is a homage to the originals instead of a direct, like, carbon copy.
Would those Rob Zombie movies, like the Devil's Rejects and the House of a Thousand Corpses, would those be considered grindhouse?
You could say that. I think Zombie has his own particular style.
Oh yeah,
And
definitely.
It's one of those type of situations where you could tell he pulls a lot from 50s and 60s and 70s style cinema. You know, it's just that you could put Rob Zombie in that type of definition of grindhouse flicks. You would just really have to tread lightly because of how some of his films play out. Like Halloween and H2, I don't think would fall under that. No, I think that just fall under your standard horror because it was written and shot that way. A lot of people don't like H2, but it's a psychological horror film, you know, and a lot of people don't like that particular style of horror because of how it fucks with you and how it fucks with your view of the characters in the movie and how like I mean before H2 nobody was like, oh, let's see what's actually making Michael tick. In H2 you see that and it's just awesome, and I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think it's fantastic because of that. So I wouldn't
I
classify
agree.
Halloween in H2 under the Grindhouse style. House of a Thousand Corpses, uh, Devil's Rejects, Lords of Salem. I haven't seen 31 yet, but it's looking like 31 is going to be more of like kind of Splatterhouse style. Oh,
Okay. Are you a fan of the just like the straight up like torture porn movies? You know, like the Saws and the Hostels and stuff.
I wasn't a fan of Hostel. Saw I started out as a fan. Um,
Yeah, but
because
they were interesting at first, but then they started to spiral out of control, and they had like the Saw 3D and stuff.
yeah,
You
the
know?
one thing I'll say about Saw is through like what they did 7 or 8 movies.
Yeah,
There isn't a lot of filmmakers that can make a super contrived storyline work for 7 movies. You know, and at first I was like, okay, just another one of these. I got to see the same old thing. And as much as I mean, it really approached being farcical at a couple points, but the fact that it still wrapped around the storyline and actually made the storyline work in for the most part. Some things I'm not really a fan of, but I think that it ended up working at least in a more basic sense than I really would have thought that it would have worked. So I mean, it's got my props for that. There's just a lot about those movies. I'm just like, okay, you're taking you're taking like the bar and intentionally just poking it higher instead of making the movie work to make it higher. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, like the first Saw movie, like that. That's the one that like shocked everybody with the whole scene where they're chained up. The whole movie revolves around this one scene where they're chained up and they have to choose to cut their feet off or not. And
yeah,
just around that simple idea, that's when you make things simpler. I think it makes it like that's what can make it better. The storyline, I guess, sometimes.
and I think that's why the first one works so well. Is that it's not got this 360-degree style of okay, let's wrap around everything to happen during this time frame, and we
Yeah,
got to make it work for this, and this person goes here. But it's very simple. You got a couple people on the outside, couple people on the inside, and one person pulling the strings. That's not super hard to do, but when you have Lord knows how many characters working in the machine of this, the story has to take precedence instead of the kills. So I think it lost it for a long time, and I really hadn't seen the last couple movies just because
me
I was
neither.
like, I'm tired of this, and especially you have to really think too, like once it gets down to nitty gritty, if you're continually pumping out these movies one a year for 7 years,
Yeah,
it kind of makes you think, okay, are they writing this on the fly that way? It just okay, does it make sense? Okay, I'll do it. You know,
right. They're
it
just
it,
bumping
it
them out.
just
It's quantity, not quality.
yeah.
Um,
So
but I don't know if you want to get into it, but with this blood drive show though, the you were telling me I haven't seen it yet. I didn't. I wanted to today, but I was just really busy. Um,
mhm.
you were saying before though that each episode has its own different, like a different style of grindhouse, and they even
Yeah,
made like a trailer that had like, it was like a trailer for each episode or whatever.
If you go to the Sci-Fi's website and look up the show, each individual episode has a trailer that looks like it was made for VHS. You can also, like, say, if you have Sci-Fi for Apple TV, you can do that too, and it has it on there as well. So each individual episode so far has dealt with its own little sectional grindhouse style. Like, the first one is more your like a post-apocalyptic racer movie, stuff like Death Race 2000.
Right.
Second episode is more of a excuse me. And it's been a hot minute since I've seen them. I have to look it up again. But like, there was one episode where it's about cannibals. There's one episode where it's about mutants. There's one episode where I think there's one like about vampires and stuff like that. So like, each individual.
What's that movie? It's kind of like the Hills Have Eyes or whatever movies.
I think it'd be around that in a way. Yeah. No, when you have 45 minutes to work with, you kind of do what you need to make it fit within that style. So I kind of see it like that, kind of more like cannibal style or a mutant or whatever. But
in those movies, they were kind of like both, I think.
Yeah. So each individual episode just has these influences from each individual, genre or subgenre of the grindhouse style. As a matter of fact, and something I didn't tell you, I completely forgot, is that the TV show is helped to be produced from Midnight Grindhouse, which is a company that puts out grindhouse style movies.
Oh, that's cool.
So like, it's not only is it good from one end of the spectrum as far as just someone who likes it, it's from a producer standpoint. From these people are like, okay, well, we want to make this and make this work for television, so this is how we do it. So
yeah. Okay. What was I going to say? I was going to ask how can people view these, because I know a lot of your listeners probably are like cord cutters by now and don't have like the regular cable. Can you get it on some kind of app, or I'm not sure if Netflix have
I myself
put these up there yet.
Yeah, I myself am a cord cutter. So I got to be the first 3 episodes via Sci-Fi's Apple TV app.
Okay.
After that, you have to put in your cable information and do it that way. I'm not sure if maybe they're on Hulu or not, because I don't have Hulu. I do have Netflix. They're probably not going to put it on Netflix until the season's over. But Netflix has gotten some sci-fi shows, so I'm hoping to see it on there. That way, you can finish it out. But right now, even three episodes in, I'm going to buy the Blu-ray anyway. So when it comes out, it's mine.
They are planning on doing a Blu-ray after the first season.
I hope so. I think it'd be hilarious if they did a VHS collection, but unfortunately, they don't make VHS anymore. So, but
well, if you wanted that could be a good way to make money, is if you get one of those old VHS recorders or whatever and make your own collection of them.
Oh yeah. But yeah, it's just nice to see that the style is still around and people still like the different genres and are willing to watch it, because it's pretty popular from what I've seen, and I hope it stays that way, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I wonder if were those Kill Bill movies? Was that that was like a form of grindhouse, wasn't
it? Definite inspiration. The Kill Bill movies were more of your standard martial arts style.
Yeah.
And well, that's what the first one definitely was. And the second one is a little bit more of just your standard revenge style movie. I want to say it takes its inspiration from like maybe I Spit on Your Grave in a way, but not 100%. No way.
Yeah.
If you've seen I Spit on Your Grave, you're probably cursing me right now, but it's got that revenge sort of tilt from it, and especially how it plays out and whatnot. Which, by the way, if you people out there, if you're watching this live, which doesn't look like it, but if you're watching this on the download, though, definitely, if you're into revenge style movies and you like Grindhouse, that I Spit on Your Grave is there's a reason why it's been re-released a couple times and why it was also banned in the United States for a little while. It is
Okay.
it's so gritty, realistic. It's got this just really kind of, for lack of a better term, it's just got a dirty feel to it,
Hmm.
and it was made that way intentionally. Same with like Last House on the Left. Um, there's just it's a real, just kind of gritty vibe to it that not a lot of movies can capture. So
Yeah, I wanted to get your take on something though. I don't know if they would ever do like a sequel or like a remake of the Kill Bill movies, but did you ever have you seen those Daredevil shows from Netflix yet?
I haven't gotten a chance to watch specifically the first Daredevil season. I've seen the first episode. Uh, the
Okay.
only the only show I really watch specifically right now is Luke Cage, because Luke Cage has a little bit more of a kind of a blaxploitation vibe to it, almost like Shaft. But that's because I really am a fan of that style. That's one of my favorite grindhouse genres is blaxploitation. I
Right.
got a couple Dolomite movies on my shelf. I got Black Dynamite on my shelf. I have Coffee and Friday Foster on my shelf too. Luke Cage just like it just like hits every note for me, and a lot of people didn't understand like, okay, why is this style the way it is? I'm like, if you haven't watched movies like that, you're not going to get a lot of it. But it's just got this really awesome vibe to it. That's why I've watched it the entire way through. But
Yeah,
I
it
do
was
want
a
to
good
watch.
show.
Huh?
It was a good show, but I was gonna say if you do get a chance to watch the Daredevil, there's like an old guy that pretty much teaches uh, Matt Murdock how to develop
Mhm.
his abilities and everything. And I was gonna get your take on it if you ever do check him out. He would be like a perfect guy to play Bill in the Kill Bill movies because his voice is almost similar too.
Huh. I'll have to watch it because it's on the list, definitely on the list. Because
Yeah.
I also have to finish Iron Fist and Jessica Jones before I get to watch the Defenders. So
Yeah, I watched Iron Fist and I've been trying to get into Jessica Jones. Uh, it's not too bad, I guess. Nate, my friend Nate likes it, I guess. So um, at first I thought she was just like a regular detective or something but apparently she does have
yeah,
powers, you know.
so it's all going to come together. Like I cannot wait for the Punisher next year. That is going to be just killer. Ha ha ha. But
Well, I was
that's
gonna
going
get
to be
your
great.
take on the defenders. I mean, each that's gonna be like a whole different thing because like sure you have each show has a style like you said like with the Luke Cage and stuff, but when they all come together, then the style has to like really change because everybody you have to mash all these different things together. Do you think that that's gonna work, or is it just gonna be too much of a like in a
I think so.
superhero-y Avengers or whatever, you know?
Well, that's kind of what it's really meant to be. I mean, there's so
Okay.
many mini teams in the Marvel pantheon, and they all kind of are like the Avengers in a way. Um, you know, a lot of people compared Guardians of the Galaxy to the Avengers when it first came out, but it had its own kind of groupie style to it. It's just that you just have to have the chemistry between the characters and the actors to make it work, and it can be done. So I'm not particularly worried about that as much as I'm more, because if I'm not mistaken, I think Doctor Strange is supposed to be the leader of the Defenders, because
Oh, okay.
Stephen is supposed to be stationed at the outpost in New York. So I'm not sure if they're going to include him, if he's going to be an actual part of the Defenders or the leader, kind of like how Iron Man is the Avengers. But it's going to be something that is going to really test how people really like the Marvel universe, because I know everyone's freaking out over Agents of Shield. I honestly super wish they would have kept around Agent Carter. I thought that was going to be a fantastic show to keep around, but they didn't, unfortunately.
Well, I've been meaning to check out more of that show just because I heard since I've only seen the first season so far of that, but apparently the Ghost Rider makes an appearance in there, so I wanted to see how good. I heard that helped make the show a little bit better because it was kind of like dipping a little bit.
Well, they really were kind of reaching a little bit because they introduced the Inhumans, and
Yeah.
so many people don't even know who the Inhumans are. And everyone talks about the Guardians of the Galaxy being a B team. The Inhumans were for a long time like a C team. I didn't even find out about the Inhumans until I saw a DVD of them on the shelf at Walmart one time, and I started asking more questions. And especially how the Inhumans have to be treated as far as character-wise. I'm surprised they're doing a TV series for the Inhumans, but I'm more interested than I was before. It just so many people they lost themselves. I'm like, okay, what is this Inhuman crap? You know, and it was just something that a lot of people couldn't get over. So that's why they brought in Ghost Rider, and the guy they got for Ghost Rider is pretty good. The CGI for Ghost Rider was pretty awesome as well. So we'll see where that goes, if anywhere.
You also got to check out that Legion show too. That was interesting.
That very interesting.
Well, because FX did their own spin on it because they made it like a lot darker because FX does like the American Horror Story and those other like psychologically like effed up type of shows, you know.
Yep. It's just something that it's gonna be interesting. I think they dropped Ghost Rider towards the end of the season though, but
oh really?
We'll see if it comes back or what happens with that.
Yeah. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say about this upcoming show, though? Or not upcoming, but the Blood Drive that's pretty new?
Yeah, I just think it's going to be something that a lot of people are going to, if they're into Grindhouse style, they're going to really get into it. And that's nothing but good things as far as new shows coming out go. And I think that was a mid-season replacement anyway. So,
well, I am curious. Like, since I haven't seen it yet, each of these involve like different styles and stuff. Are they like totally, like the storyline? Are they like separate from each other, or do they kind of like how is it continuity wise? I guess.
Well, every single episode is still based around the two main characters, and I'm not going to give away too much about it, but it's all centrally based. And it works. The first couple episodes, it seemed to flow really well and how they got into predicament A, predicament B. So it's more interesting as far as the plot movement goes than I thought it was going to be, which is like really nice. They keep everything segmented, but they also keep the main story going along with the backstory, because like the genres kind of take a backseat to the main overarching storyline, and so many things are happening with the main overarching storyline, and it really just kind of starts from like episode 1 and just boom, you're in, but you got to pay attention to almost everything, otherwise you're gonna be watching next week's show going, okay, how did that happen? Why did this happen?
Yeah,
you're thrown through about 3 separate storylines, not including the genre for the week, all at once. So,
well, it's cool that Sci-Fi is doing such an interesting show because I don't watch too many sci-fi shows myself, but from what I've seen, a lot of the movies have just been, and like TV shows have, like you said, been kind of like throwaway shows, I guess, like the Sharknado, the Sharktopus,
Yeah.
So yeah, sci-fi has always had a good potential, but sometimes, a lot of times, actually, it kind of lets you down,
Yeah,
Do
All
you know
right,
the names
so
of who is it, like the people that own the show, like the head of the network?
I don't know.
Hmm. Okay.
I haven't gone that far into it. So
Well, wasn't the other thing you want to talk about was like the what's going on recently with the Xbox systems?
yeah, I'm actually just pulling that up here real quick. Let's see. So the deets here on the One X, aka Project Scorpio, aka why the hell are they naming their product so horribly? Uh, here's the thing about this. Not gonna bash it all night long or anything, and this really is gonna be kind of overarch about the product. I think number one, they should have kept Project Scorpio. That was a much better name for this than the One X. No, just my opinion. But um,
Yeah, they should have the One X that be like the internal code name, and the Scorpio
yeah.
actually be the system name.
So the deets on this: 8-core custom AMD CPU. It's got a standard clock of 2.3 gigahertz. 12 gigs of GDDR5 RAM with a 6 teraflop GPU. It's 326 gigabits per second memory bandwidth. Now, the having the liquid cooling option in there, fantastic actually. Although
What?
that would freak me out a little bit.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say something about that. My friend Nate, that's one of the reasons he says that he would never get an Xbox One X because of the water cooling, and he's not really like a big fan of it, and he's worried, especially in like a console thing with like like you have a family and kids and stuff, you'd be worried about having liquid inside of your
Yeah,
computer, essentially.
yeah. The one thing I'll say too about it is that the it's really scary getting something that's liquid cooled. I'm more afraid for people who are first week buyers. People are going to get the pre-orders and stuff because you just know what's going to happen week one.
Well, what would you have told people if you were still working at, because you were working at Walmart as a manager
Yeah.
in the electronics department, right?
There's some people who are massively against anything water cooled. I'm not particularly fond of water cooling as a standard. It's all
But
about information. It's not about pushing people away from the product because honestly, liquid cooling is a fantastic way to cool your PC. Now,
well, it
of
is
course, I say PC.
mainly if you want to overclock it, but
Yeah.
it is kind of risky a little bit, like I said, when you do have it in a console versus an actual computer that's dedicated to performance.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that, I mean, yeah, it's only going to be a 2.3 gigahertz clock, but I'm like, if it was going to be just 2.3 gigahertz clock, you should have upped the CPU on it.
Yeah.
As much as a lot of people are like, well, just go and bash them. I'm not going to. They're really reaching out and trying to get a unit that's going to pump power, pump specs, and be able to use the specs to the fullest. Now, however, of course, I was talking to you guys yesterday on your podcast TNT, and I of course think that general technology, as far as what we have in our homes right now, is light years ahead of where we really need to be focused. Um, I mean, not very many people are going to notice 4K or 5K or 8K. It's just not there. It's just not there, especially content wise. And even with the PS Pro, PS4 Pro, and this coming out, even if it runs at native 4K, I mean, a lot of people are going to buy this. Are going to be pushed to buy this by people trying to make better commission, and they're going to be like, okay, well, what's the advantage? Well, I mean, do you have 4K TV? No. Well, you should have a 4K TV, but this will still work on your 1080p television. And that's what you're going to hear. That's word for word what you're going to hear from salesmen. However, it's nice having that option there, and that they're willing to pop in an actual 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray player, which the PS4 Pro doesn't have, to make the experience even better and to kind of push that forward a little bit more.
Well, if I was going to be devil's advocate, though, I would say that the nice thing about 4K too is that with the upscaling of the regular 1080p makes it better than it originally was. So I've heard, at least.
Well, a lot of times you're going to run into artifacting and stuff like that. I mean, I have a 4K TV myself, and I don't actually have any 4K content right now. I just don't.
Yeah.
The upscaling is only prevalent in like maybe 20% of a lot of the content that I consume on that television. You know, and even 20% for a format that's now been out like 2 years, that's pretty horrible. You know, and in fact, that 4K Blu-ray has only really hit the market within the last year or so, and is maybe taking up about 5% of store shelves. Tells you something. You know?
Yeah.
And yeah, we're up on all digital projectors and all this other stuff, but as you know, content goes, even with the massive amount of YouTube content that's out there, I would say maybe, and I'm being very generous here, 15 to 20% at best are doing 4K content to YouTube. And that's, like I said, that's being generous. You know, there's just not a whole lot of your normal, average, everyday person who consumes content really biting into 4K pseudo craze, I guess I would call it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of taking me away from the Scorpio or the 1X. It's a nice box. It's got some sweet specs. I know a lot of people are tripping out over, you know, like the frames per second and the refresh rate and all this other stuff, and how many the 30 to 60 frames per second, blah blah blah. But I think they're missing the overall point of the product, and that is to push the specs of the current generation forward a little bit more. I'm just not 100% sure it's going to achieve that level, because, I mean, not everybody consumes even games in that format, or he really has a need for that as much as Microsoft thinks. But it's going to be a good product, though, I think.
Yeah. Another thing I like to say is sometimes, too, some of the specs are actually misleading on as far as what they call them, what they actually are, because I don't want to say it's like an outright lie, but like with that feature on the newer TVs, like the 4K TVs that they call HDR, high dynamic range, that's not actually high dynamic range. I'm a photographer, and I know a lot of people might get confused as far as what I'm talking about, but like, say if you have like your standard like 1080p video, which is the same color depth as like a JPEG image, is it's technically 8-bit, but the HDR that supposedly that they use with video, with the 4K TVs and everything, and like the newer Xboxes, that's supposed to be 10-bit. What they would, what most photographers consider, like, if you take a picture, you know how you can take a picture and you could save the picture as what's called a raw image. Have you heard of that in
Yeah.
photography?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like a raw image is like 14 to 16 bit. And they consider the raw images to be a medium dynamic range. An actual true high dynamic range picture that has the file extension HDR or some are EXR, those are actually 32 bits for their color depth. So that's actually a very misleading title that they call it. If you were to actually have video that was 32 bits for every frame of the video, the size of the video file would be like ridiculously large because each, like for one picture of an HDR, that's like, it's like 100 megabytes just for one frame. So I know that's like a lot of nerd talk, but
Well, I think that's. I mean, it's important for some people to learn that. When you take a look at how companies are using those terminologies to sell.
yeah,
One other thing is, what's that? Oh man, when I was selling TVs, it wasn't aspect ratio. It was like oh man, something that you don't see on TV boxes anymore because people started calling them out on it, and I started calling people out on it too when they're like, oh, this has it's like contrast ratio, I think it is. It's like it's got
yeah,
a 200,000 to 1 contrast ratio. This one's only got a 75,000 to 1 contrast ratio, and I used to tell people like, you do realize that is a completely bogus stat on most televisions. They're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, your contrast ratio is actually more arbitrary as far as whoever makes the TV that you have. You know,
yeah,
it's like color contrast ratio or something like that. It's been a while since
dynamic.
I've had to talk about that. Can you tell?
That's
But it's like,
cool.
man, holy crap! It's been a while. It's been over a year. But companies stopped putting that number on the boxes because people started not caring because the truth was coming out and people were like, well, what's the color contrast ratio? It's completely a useless stat. And if you're going to buy a television based on that, you're not buying the right television to begin with.
Right. Well,
It's just something that to help pump an extra $150, $250, $300 out of your pocket.
yeah. Well, both of you, you're a photographer too, like you said, and obviously I am as well. But we both know that, like, when you try to go shop for a camera, that just because it has more one camera has more megapixel, that doesn't mean that it's like an overall better camera. There's way
Well,
more things that you have to research about that.
part of the reason why I didn't, go all in on a more expensive camera, yeah, I think I could have tried to spend another $50 when I was looking for something that had like a little bit better zoom.
Yeah.
But like as much as photographers like having these super clear zoomed in photos and whatnot, and having these other everything is so crystal clear on the picture, I'm a little bit different in that. Not every person who's into photography is into having the complete clearest picture ever. I like having these types of like interference imperfections. Part of the reason why I have my I shot some photos in a graveyard for a project once, and as much as it comes out looking imperfect, it works. And these little kind of grainy bits in the pictures and whatnot, it just, for me, it brings out a little bit more of the character of the subject instead of having this blown out super clear picture. I think that's one thing as a photographer, when people get started, they don't think about.
Well,
What's going to be the character of your photos?
yeah.
Oh,
Well,
I
it's
just
just
want to
like
send
what
you
we
good
were.
pictures.
Yeah. it's just like what we were saying about with the storyline. Like with photography, it's the most important thing is like your message in the picture and the content of it. You know.
What comes out in the frame is what you put into the frame.
Yeah.
If you have to keep touching everything up and making sure that that's perfect in the background, that's perfect in the foreground, you're concentrating too much on too little.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think Ben's problem. Our friend Ben, who we were hoping to have on the show tonight, but he I guess is kind of busy. But he likes to do comics. He likes to draw comics and do animations and stuff. And I think sometimes with his, he said with his when he was drawing the comics before, uh, he would be trying to make like each frame of the comic like perfect. You know, like the lines and the color and everything. And he just like focused on each thing like meticulously to like with an OCD. You know.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's nothing wrong with being meticulous in your work. You just have to
No.
know exactly like the style that you want to portray. I think in Ben's case, he has a style that he wants to portray, and he pursues that to a very fine degree. Like especially when you're working in like his field of comics and whatnot, and wanting to have that be a representation of your work as a whole. I can definitely understand wanting to do it that way.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely hard. Each of us that does something creative, we have to figure out like
Yeah.
when is it time to move on, because you're just going to be after a certain point you're just going to be like making minor modifications, and uh, you're not going to get anywhere. You know, I think there's a famous quote that somebody says, "All your work, all our work is like it's never finished. It's only like just abandoned or whatever." You know.
Yeah. And I had to learn that when I was like, of course, I'm still in the middle of writing the book, but I went through the first like 2 chapters 7 different times and wrote it 7 different ways. You know, and every single time that I would rewrite it, it would get better sounding in my head and how I was reading it to myself. And the person who was kind of pseudo editing for me, she was helping me out a lot in structure. Every single time I'd come up with a different style to say the exact same thing. You know, where I'm at now is the level that I like and I'm comfortable writing at. It's just, you can do things 17 different ways until you find the way that works for you. You're going to keep doing it and keep doing the same thing over and over. Um,
Right.
as far as your style goes and whatnot, it's something that has to evolve, and especially in content creation, that takes a lot of focus to be able to do that. A massive amount of focus to be able to do that. Especially when some people are like, they write it like, okay, it's done. And then someone critiques it and they're like, what do you mean? Oh, I mean, this, and this, piecing together your story, and oh, well, you have to bridge this and this and make this matter, and the style of making it flow. That's I think that's something that some writers they cannot grasp at all is flow and intent of your writing to do. It's something I had to learn to do and was willing to learn to do.
Right.
And that goes for any type of creation as well. Until it flows and makes sense to how you flow, you can't achieve anything by just doing it and then not being able to go back with a fine tooth comb and, okay, I need to do this differently. You know?
Yeah.
So, well, we are actually about an hour in now. Holy crap. Holy moly.
It's only been an hour. I thought we were like talking way longer than that. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I think it's how we're gonna. Yeah, I think that's how we're gonna leave it this week, my man.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess we said everything we could say about the Xbox. I know you're a PlayStation guy.
I am, yeah.
But it's always good to see competition. You know, I'm sure the PlayStation.
And
if they haven't already, I'm sure they're gonna do. Haven't they done the slim version of their PS4, like the upgraded?
Yeah.
Like the PS4 Pro.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that Sony might make some tweaks to the PS4 Pro in the future because they're probably going to come out with a different version for holiday season this year. I think they're probably going to switch to a 4K drive, or at least something that will be able to emulate that performance on it.
Yeah.
But I think overall, the style of two companies is getting very different and somewhat the same in certain aspects of what they're trying to do. They're trying to make this generation last a while, like intentionally go past the 10-year mark of like the console wars have been about 10-year obsolescence for a while now. I think they're trying to make this one stretch because everybody's assuming that, you know, after this generation, it's all going download. And unfortunately, you're wrong, but that's for another day. But it's nice to see both companies still striving to do well. And, you know, the Xbox has made some fantastic strides in the Xbox platform since the release of the original Xbox One. So,
yeah, I would like to get a Switch, but I would only probably play that Zelda game. The Zelda is the main thing that I like on there.
Oh, you mean Zelda Breath of the Wii U? I mean,
well, yeah, they had released that for the Wii U as the final game for that console.
Yeah, this should have been the final game, period. That's right, Nintendo. The Switch still sucks.
Yeah. I don't know how much I would like what they kind of did with it myself. Yeah.
It's a really crappy iPad with controllers. That's all it is.
Yeah. Plus, they didn't. I forget the whole thing with it. Like if you had with the controllers, you had to buy an extra like charging thing for it or something. I don't know how all that worked, but I know people were mad about that.
Yeah, well, maybe they should have made a better purchase.
Yeah. Well, buddy.
Nintendo Switch. Just giving you the Wii U gamepad to take on the go. That's all that is. All it is.
Yeah.
And on that mercenary note, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're done for the night.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, it has been an honor and a privilege rebooting the past is now the future version of the CrushCast. So
yeah. Well, are you going to be doing this show weekly or monthly?
It might be bi-weekly. If it does go weekly, it'll probably be every single Sunday night. That's really the best time frame that I have to be able to get this out in a timely manner. So if it goes weekly, and I'll let everybody know on Twitter and Facebook, if it is going to go weekly, I will pop that out and also pop out the link on Twitter, After Eyes Crush, and on Facebook at After Eyes Crush Entertainment. And I'll probably also pop out something on Instagram as well, of course, at After Eyes Crush. So,
yeah. And you check me out I'm just Ian Adams on YouTube, and I do the Talk News and Trivia podcast. We're thinking about changing it to Talk News and just Tech, so it'll still be TNT, but because we don't really do the trivia on there anymore.
Yeah, you'll probably do it sometime in the future. I have no doubt.
Well, maybe sometime like a special thing once in a while or something, if we're feeling frisky, I guess.
Yeah. Alrighty, everybody. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. we will see you guys next time. Of course, I'm After Dice Crush. That over there is Eon Adams. And until next time, goodbye and good night.
Peace.